Sexuality.
Everybody, and welcome to Secular Sexuality. I am Megan Bonner, and joining me as always is, of course...
Howdy, I'm Christy.
And your last name?
Powell.
And joining us today is special guest. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Lauren Mason. I'm a yoga teacher, and I'm training to be a yoga therapist.
Ah, that sounds very flexible.
Yes.
Just a little bit crunchy?
Just a little bit.
Yeah? Oh, okay. Well, today we're going to be talking about, I think, yoga, our experiences with, or limited experiences with yoga.
Have you ever done yoga?
I did, actually. Yeah. I did once.
Once, okay, so not like a regular thing.
No, I did once, and it was probably more the, what do you call it? The person, the teacher, was very wooey, and that just put me off the whole thing. But yeah, that was the one time. Yeah,
I mean, myself, I was always like, flexibility's never been my specialty. Nothing about this really appeals to me, but I made two mistakes. One was I went through this process where for about a year I was wanting to try everything twice. Every new thing that I could do, every opportunity to try something different. I wanted to not just try it once where it's like scary and you have all this pressure to like get it right and figure it out, but trying to do it twice so that I could have like a real opportunity to get to know these different things. And
you have to have like a data set to make a decision.
Yeah, it's good empirical research. And then the second mistake I made was telling like a childhood friend about it who happened to be a yoga teacher who was like, oh, but you're going to try this now. And I was like, okay. So she got me a slamming deal on a yoga therapy session, and damn it, now I recommend it to my clients all the time. So, yeah.
Nice. There are some things in yoga, I think, that are probably parts incorporated into yoga that I practice myself, but that's more mindfulness and kind of, what is the word that I am looking for right now? Mindfulness and...
Zen-y? I mean, meditative, you know?
Yeah, sorry, meditation. So... Before we get into all of that fun stuff, I have a few shout-outs, and I should say news items or, what do you call it, just stuff.
Yeah, and I just want to say thank you to everybody who is joining us and who stuck around with us as we're trying to figure everything out and actually get on air. And thank you to the booth and everybody who was able to, at the last minute, get that shit figured out.
Thank you, Mark. So, thank you, Silas.
Thank you all for sticking around and joining us as we muddle through.
To start us off here, I would like to shout out to the ACA newsletter. Our... I want to say third edition just went out, and it is amazing. Anyone, if you have not seen the newsletter, you must see it. It is awesome.
Including the back issues featuring wonderful spots.
Anyway, we're not going to say who, wrote for it, but...
Just excellent writers.
It's worth a look. Yeah. Also, if you enjoy what you see or hear, please check us out on Patreon. That, of course, is patreon.com/secularsexuality. Also, if you ever want to get in contact with us, you can call the show, number on your screen. Also, you can email us at sex@atheist-community.org.
And we really do answer all of those emails. To the people who are sitting here thinking, well, he didn't answer my email. I apologize. I will. I do. We do. And we love to keep the conversation going. So, reach out. Let us know what's going on.
And that will also be the perfect place for you to submit your suggestions as we try to name our mascots, our peach and our eggplant here have no names, and they need names desperately so that we can properly refer to them.
And it's hard to have like a good backstory without a name first.
Yeah.
And I think that these creative characters absolutely need a good story.
Oh, they do. They do. And so if you have any suggestions, please send an email over to oh my good Lord, sex@atheist-community.org. There we go. The speaker series, the ACA has a speaker series, which is awesome, and it's been rebooted. The next speaker we have is Aaron Ra, and he will be here this Saturday at 11 a.m. Look on your ACA social media for the specific details for that one, but that should be really awesome. Then we are going to have Hemant Mehta in town on November 24th. Yay, I'm so excited. Sorry, I'm totally going to ruin the microphone. And then next week, I have my piece of paper here, otherwise I would not remember anything. Next week, we are going to talk about how to survive the holidays, because it's the holidays, and we all know how much fun the holidays can be.
Yeah, if you're watching this show, then I imagine you've had at least one awkward moment at a Starbucks as somebody says Merry Christmas, or that's if you're lucky. More likely, it's been at Thanksgiving across from Uncle Peter and his goddamn opinions.
Or Aunt Karen.
Yeah. So we'd love to hear your horror stories if you want to email us or call in next week. But for today, we're going to be talking a little bit more about yoga.
Yep. And one last thing before we get into the topic of yoga, and that is a news story. Are you guys ready for this one?
Boop, 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 boop.
Okay, so
we didn't rehearse that. I apologize.
This is coming from a very reputable source, the New York Post. But there is a video, so I promise you this woman is real. A British woman by the name of Atheist says that she has had, sex with upwards of 20 ghosts. Her first...
Slut.
Don't shame.
In a good way.
Yeah, does he give the time frame? It might be over a considerable amount of time.
Well, apparently she claimed...
Lifetimes even.
Yeah.
She claims that she slept with her first ghost when she was engaged. But now she is re-engaged to a poltergeist.
Okay, but not a ghost.
No, not a ghost. Apparently she upgraded.
Cool.
I don't know if anyone out there wants to tell us what the difference between a ghost and a poltergeist is.
Specifically their genitals, though. That's
Yes.
the only part of that conversation I really want to know.
One.
Right, yeah, like how, more corporeal, less corporeal, built-in vibrator, who knows? But, so, what do you guys think of Amethyst here?
I'm just picturing that scene from The Exorcist with the split pea soup.
Oh.
I'm just going to let you're the gross ones. I didn't say anything. You're filling those details in yourself.
The poltergeist I know about is the one in Harry Potter, and that does not seem like a sexual being at all. Yeah, he seems like a trickster that's kind of obnoxious.
I feel like I'm about to anger both of y'all and the entire internet.
Aren't
there lots of ghosts in Harry Potter?
There are lots of ghosts, but Peeves is a poltergeist.
Yes, there's a specific character that is a poltergeist, which is different.
And that's like a major part of his character.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. You heard it here first, I guess.
He is known as Peeves the poltergeist.
Right.
Okay, all right.
And he peeves people.
I guess I'd say you can't make this up, but somebody did.
Okay,
somebody
and the
clearly
saddest
did.
part is that this means you have not read Harry Potter.
Parts of it?
Really?
Oh,
I read like the first 4 when I was a kid.
Shame. All right.
He's in the first 4.
When I was a kid.
Okay, whatever. It's fine.
I was
Anyway.
not allowed to read Harry Potter because
Neither was I.
it was against the word of God.
Yes, I had to convince my mother that it was okay that there was magic and witches and wizards in there because it was all about friendship.
You
and
clearly didn't explain the whole poltergeist ghost situation.
I did not.
to her.
I left those points out
mean-
because I think that would have been a point in the negative column.
But it also didn't really explain the true difference between a ghost and a poltergeist.
didn't.
So we're still looking for answers on
Yeah.
that one. So apparently, Amethyst said the ghost asked her to. The ghost asked her to get married during a trip to celebrate their 9-month relationship at England's Wookiee Hole Caves.
I mean, if they're ostensibly immortal, why rush into anything?
Also, I didn't know ghosts were allowed to travel. I thought that they kind of, maybe
had to stay?
They kind of stay around where they're haunting. I thought that was their whole gig.
You know, there are so many things. There are so many things about this particular story that have me just perplexed. That really is not near the top of the list.
There's so many
I don't
better
want to discount
questions.
it because I do have people in my life who talk to spirits and deal with spirits, and that's a legitimate part of their experience. So it's really just the sexual relationship that confuses me because a lot of the people I know who talk to spirits, it's like communicating messages that they want their loved ones to know about and that kind of thing. It's not like a personal connection
Well,
in that way.
to wrap this up, I'm sorry, but I have to quote. There's a quote here. There was no going down on one knee. He doesn't have knees.
Oh.
But for the first time, I heard him speak. I could actually hear his voice, and it was beautiful, deep, sexy, and real.
You know, and I mean, the point of the article was to
Somebody skipped
for
me
somebody
right
to
there.
make fun and to make a
9
joke.
months
but,
without talking?
right? Yeah. What kind of relationship
That is a
that?
lot.
I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of sex apparently.
A lot of sex, but
And only sex.
But it frustrates me that we humor this to the point of letting a woman kind of really fuck up her life and her reputation and her situation without acknowledging that there's obviously some very unhealthy behaviors going on here. As a therapist, I'm like screaming inside.
Yeah. So what you're suggesting is that maybe better mental health care in this particular situation may...
Not only that, I mean, maybe she has great resources and great access to healthcare, but just a society that it maybe is a little bit less encouraging or understanding of what we all recognize as bullshit.
I think the encouragement here is just from the sheer, really? Factor.
right.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was my news story of the day or of the week. So smooth ass transition into, he doesn't have legs, so I guess he would have a hard time doing yoga.
Actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've taught a whole range of different classes. So as a yoga therapist, I've taught classes to amputees and people in wheelchairs and all kinds. So I've taught everything from your traditional classroom yoga that you would think about, that we all kind of see and know about, all the way to teaching yoga for Alzheimer's patients, teaching yoga for amputees, but also teaching just straight meditation, yoga therapy, stuff like that. So
It's not just 20-somethings named Becky with tight pants and tight ponytails.
It's not. And unfortunately, I'm
You're taking away a dream.
I mean, there are a lot of those.
A lot of Beckys.
Yeah, it's part of my personal mission because I am a white woman doing yoga and I am naturally flexible. I was a dancer. I'm totally the stereotypical yoga person. I work really hard to make sure that I am basing my teaching on philosophy and history and that I'm teaching a well-rounded practice. So it's not just showing up and stretching and looking pretty in your Lululemon pants that you spent $95 on, but really getting into the full practice.
Yeah, so let me dive in right there. I mean, when you say tradition and history, depending on who you ask, yoga has this incredible tradition that reaches back thousands of years, or it was developed by a white woman in California in the 70s.
Yeah.
And kind of, I think both are sort of true, but what does that actually mean, and why should we care? Like, is it an ancient tradition, and does it matter?
Yeah, yes and no. So the philosophy behind yoga is upwards to 3,000 years old, maybe older. That's the first text that we have that record some of the philosophy are the Vedas. And they were written 2000 BC was the first time they were written down. But the philosophy could have been practiced before then. And that philosophy is the basis for a whole lot of things, including yoga, Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism. So all these religions, but also yoga, which kind of developed outside. So the philosophical origins go way, way back. But the kind of physical stuff we practice today is maybe 100 years old, something like that. And in America, it very much was mixed with traditions that we already had going on. Like women did a lot of breath and movement that looked a lot like dance. So you can look up some like movement exercises from the 1920s, and women are wearing these like flowy little outfits, and they're dancing around on the lawn, and there's beautiful music. And it's all about looking pretty and being relaxed and doing exercise that's not going to make you sweat. Whereas men were doing a lot of, gymnastics and bodybuilding and that kind of stuff at this time. So yoga came to the U.S. and it was really appealing to women because it did incorporate things like breath and movement together and doing these really pretty postures. So yoga kind of evolved in two ways. There's one, school that's very athletic, very gymnastics based, and then there's a lot of practices that really appeal to those women who are already practicing those kind of flowy movement, dancey things. And if you want to learn more about this, there's a great book called Yoga Body, and I can't remember the author's name right now. It's definitely an anthropology text, so it's like a textbook. It's a little bit dense.
I usually throw a link to those in the comments after the episode, so we'll get it together on that.
I'll include it for sure. So Yoga Body has a great history of like the physical yoga practice and how it is based in philosophy and how it isn't.
Okay. I heard you sort of talk about the philosophies that underpin yoga and sort of separate out Buddhism and Taoism and these different things, Hinduism most especially. But that being said, do you put those in the same category? Like, does yoga fall into the same box that Buddhism or Hinduism would fall into?
No, definitely not.
So it's not a religious practice?
No, it's interesting because there's a lot of overlap because, again, we're dealing with like 3,000 years of history and the philosophy kind of winding.
And 7 billion people on the planet all interpreting that
in their own way.
Exactly, yeah. So there's a lot of overlap because yoga is still one of the 6 schools of Hindu philosophy that is traditionally studied by the Brahmin caste. So like, real traditional Hindu study, yoga is one aspect of it, but it's the philosophy of yoga. So it's that really old stuff from a long, long time ago.
Yeah.
And yoga in this context, one translation is union. It's about, like joining with things.
Well, I mean, I definitely want to get to talking to you about yoga therapy and how it can help with trauma, particularly like sexual trauma and these different things. But I have to ask, these philosophies that underpin it, how do you separate that out, or do you separate that out from magic and religion and, this sort of like irrational or at least not evidence-based thinking?
Or what we often call is woo.
Yeah, I mean,
there's that box.
To it as that too.
So as a skeptic, does yoga have anything to offer me if I'm not impressed by,
Yeah,
the
so
woo.
it has...
the woo.
Right. It's definitely still included in Hindu philosophy, but it's kind of a different approach. The yoga that we practice now kind of developed outside of and alongside of the Hindu religion. And now, one way I really like to describe it is that yoga is like a system of tools that you can use to address any kind of spiritual goal that you have. So I came to yoga and I was, a sort of practicing Christian when I came into yoga, and I was really disillusioned with all of the practices in Christianity I was being forced to do because of my, Christian school and church upbringing. And I found a deeper spiritual connection doing yoga, just going to yoga classes, than I'd ever found doing a lot of like Bible study and stuff like that. So the tools can be, and no one even taught me that. No one was like, hey, you should use these tools to get to know your religion better. That's all just something that kind of automatically happened. So the structure of yoga allows you to really explore yourself deeper, and there are no restrictions for how you do that. You might go to a class and someone might mention some philosophy, or they might chant a little bit in Sanskrit. You can participate as much as you want or as little as you want. A lot of those things, to some extent are included because it makes it feel kind of exotic and kind of cool.
Brings in that mysticism.
Brings in that authenticity.
Well, I mean, that's the same thing, though, that kicked Megan out the door, or that drove you away from it, from what you're saying.
Yeah, for sure. I was going to say that I know that is something that appeals to a lot of people, but do you push back on that at all? Or do you just let people kind of do their own?
Yeah, my own teaching style is I very much offer an experience, and I don't use a lot of the Sanskrit terminology or a lot of the philosophy. I don't overtly talk about that. And I actually also teach 200-hour training, which is like the lowest level yoga teacher training. And that's what I teach my students who are becoming yoga teachers. I'm like, this is a lot of stuff for you to know and to share with your students if they ask. Because a lot of people are going to be turned off by you chanting, by you talking about things in Sanskrit, by you making claims you don't know anything about. Because, if you're just learning about this like on Tuesday and you want to go teach a class on Thursday, you shouldn't be assuming that you know anything about this huge tradition of culture. I really encourage people, like, do your own study, but then when you go and teach, only teach what your students are asking for. So if you have this huge group, unless all 10 people in that room are like, I'm here for spiritual development, then I usually suggest to leave that out completely.
Okay. Well, in that case, what, how should I put this? What real, factual,
tangible, for the skeptics that are watching right now.
Yeah, let's talk about tangible benefits. One of the great things about yoga therapy coming up as a profession and getting kind of structure put around it. We're working on getting things like licensure. There's a lot more studies that are coming out on yoga. And the biggest effects are stress relief, stress management. Yoga works on your system to help to kind of down-regulate. So it helps you to deal with stress on a biochemical level. So it helps with things like muscle tension because you do some stretching, you do some movement, that feels good. But also it helps your whole system, neurologically, physically, biologically. It really calms you down. It helps your body to process stress hormones. It helps you to find a more restful state so your body can heal and digest. A lot of us tend to live in a state where we are stressed all the time, and we're not able to process a lot of things that we have going on a physical level or on a mental, emotional level. So yoga helps you to literally quiet down through your whole system. It's really similar to, you're having a really stressful week and you don't even know why you're upset about something, and you go and have a drink with some friends and all of a sudden you're like, oh, that's what's been bothering me.
Hear yourself decompressing.
Right.
So it's about creating a space for that.
Yes, a space for that for yourself. And that's why one of the reasons that, consistent practice is often recommended is because you need that kind of check-in on a consistent basis. And even just going in and doing some stretches, it helps you to be like, oh, I'm a little tighter here than I normally am. Like, what the hell is that about? Like right now I'm having more neck pain than usual because I had a really stressful travel experience and not a very good night's rest for the last 3 nights. And so I have more pain than I usually have. So I know now to be more gentle with myself and not lift heavy things as much as possible and things like that. But then also it helps you to kind of see what's going on in your own brain and your own emotions and say why am I responding to this person or this situation in this way? Is it because of a past experience I have? Is it because something I just experienced today? So it provides space for that kind of self-understanding.
And I think it sounds a lot like CBT and not the cock and ball torture. But
on a show like this, that can get very confusing.
Yeah.
It's come up before.
It has, in a really, really funny way. But cognitive behavioral therapy and mindfulness. And it sounds like yoga is giving maybe that time that you take for yoga is allowing for the also mental time to decompress, to work through, all the things.
Exactly. And so that's why when I'm teaching, I am allowing space for that work to take place. So I do, poses, and we do breathing, I do meditation, but I try to make it as general as possible so that I'm not making a suggestion for someone like you have to have this experience or you have to make this self-discovery. It's more like just come here and be with yourself. Mm-hmm. And that can be enough work in itself.
Yes. Learning to live with yourself is probably one of the most difficult things.
Yes. Yeah. And so, as a yoga therapist, I'll often give, lifestyle suggestions or movement suggestions, things like that. But I'm usually not giving those suggestions to a public class. I'm usually giving you the space to make your own discoveries and then make your own decisions. And that is a skill in itself. It took me a while to kind of take that step back and allow the space rather than trying to tell people all about this great philosophical yoga crap that I've learned and I've discovered for myself. So yeah, I find it really off-putting when I go to a yoga class and someone's like, I made this great discovery about myself and let me share it all with you and let me read this poem and isn't that so amazing? You should feel this way too. Don't tell me how I should feel.
So you can have yoga without Rumi involved.
Oh, yeah. Rumi is great. It can be real nice, but I was most yoga classes, you'll go in and they might read a poem or they might kind of smatter some affirmations throughout the class, and that's fine. Definitely shop around because it's to each their own. I'm a very, kind of scientifically minded person. I love anatomy, so I love to teach people about how their bodies work. But I'm not really good at putting the philosophy in. Mm-hmm. And some people love that. Some people love coming to class and hearing poetry and hearing verses all scattered throughout the class. I don't like that personally, so I don't teach that way. So there are a whole variety of teachers who can teach you anything from we're just going to lay on the floor for an hour and listen to some chanting to we're going to do really strong, crazy headstands and it's going to be hard and you're going to sweat. And you're going to learn something about yourself in either one of those situations. Mm-hmm. But there is a huge, huge variety. So I would recommend really shopping around.
And real quick, I have it written here, but if you could tell the audience, we have a question of where can they find out about your yoga classes?
Oh, yeah. I teach in San Antonio, Texas. So I'm visiting right now. I'm doing my training at Yoga Yoga in Austin, which is a great studio. They have 4 locations, and they really try to offer a wide range. So that's one place you can come here in town. I just teach in San Antonio, and I primarily teach our teacher trainings there in San Antonio, so I don't have a lot of public classes. The other thing I focus on is prenatal yoga. So I have one prenatal class that I teach a couple days a month, and then everything else I'm teaching is private groups. I'm doing a private prenatal class that's coming up, or I do a lot of private yoga therapy, things like that. So I'm actually not super available.
In high demand.
I know.
We're glad to have you with us.
Yeah, I do have a website. You can follow me on my website. I have a blog, and I do some videos studying philosophy. That's laurenmasonyoga.us. So if you want to, check out what I have to offer, you're welcome to follow me online. And occasionally I will post videos and practices there.
And that's all linked in the ACA Facebook group, by the way. So please join us there. So anybody who watches this show knows that for about 30 seconds every episode, I sit flat in a chair and pretend to be able to dance. And that's because I have no hips. Lauren has known this ever since she tried to take me salsa dancing 15 years ago, and it was an absolute disaster. But
you tried real hard, though.
Real hard. Since I started going specifically to yoga therapy, one of the things that they've been able to really do for me is just help me to get more in touch with my body, be able to actually feel things, to be able to say not just that's my pinky, but to feel connected to it in a certain way. Mm-hmm. And that's especially important for folks who have gone through trauma. And so I'm wondering what kind of recommendations you might have for people who are skeptical nervous about the concept of yoga therapy having anything to offer them, but are maybe looking for something after, either a rape or some other really traumatic experience.
Yeah, there are trauma-sensitive classes, like specifically group classes for victims of trauma of, all varieties. You can find really specific classes. Austin is a huge yoga community, so there's a lot here. But also working one-on-one with someone, all yoga therapists have some trauma training. There are some who specifically focus on trauma, so you can definitely meet with someone personally. It's also possible to go to a public class and just kind of do as little as you want to do as much as you want to do, and just, try to start connecting to your body again, because especially when your body feels like something that has been violated or something that has been taken from you, coming and just being with yourself in a safe space can be a useful step. There are some yoga practices that we'll have to do with genitalia and activating, deep parts of yourself and activating the pelvic floor and things like that. You never have to do those practices, because who the hell's gonna know that you're clenching your anus? No one's going to know. Those things.
My boyfriend might disagree, but otherwise.
In the yoga
class, it's true. Yes.
Yeah. So and they do have fancy names for all kinds of stuff. So you might hear your yoni talked about, ladies. But yeah, you're. Usually most teachers will talk about it in a very anatomical, very straightforward way, because we're dealing with the physical body. And there are some, energetic body aspects that are going to come up in that. And you might hear people talk about chakras. And they might talk about specific areas that are affected by specifically sexual trauma. So you just go and you listen and do as much as you're comfortable doing. And then if you feel a good connection with your teacher, you can say hey, I have this history of trauma. Can we please not do this, or can we please do this? You can be really open. That is another part of our training as yoga therapists, but as yoga teachers as well, that we are really careful about privacy, and we're really careful about being sensitive to those things. So I would say for the most part, yoga classes are very welcoming, very accepting, and you get bad teachers, but it's very rare. It's very rare that anyone's going to make you do something.
Well, I mean, to the bad teachers thing, and I didn't mean to step on you, Megan, but I've had bad therapists, no question.
Oh, yeah.
I've had plenty of therapists that were trying to push this sort of bastardized understanding of Buddhism on me, not coming from an empirical, well-researched mindfulness meditation is useful, but in a, Buddha is magic kind of perspective. And I have had therapists try and shove Christianity and these different things on me. And now when people call into the show, when people ask me in my real life, how do I find a good therapist? I have some answers to those questions. And I mean, we've talked about it here. I definitely, ASECT and these different organizations. What if I wanted a good yoga therapist and I really, really don't want to talk about my chakra? I don't really want to get into this bullshit, not researched, squiggy, wooey kind of stuff.
Yeah, let's address the woo just a little bit, and then I'll talk about, we do have a couple professional organizations, so that's a good place to start.
Sure.
International Association of Yoga Therapists and Yoga Alliance are two organizations here in the U.S. that have registered teachers who have done, a minimum standard of training that you can look at the website and see, what that training is. Pretty much all the serious yoga teachers are going to be into some of that wooey crap, just a little bit. I study it. I am still fairly skeptical myself. I have experienced some things that were surprising for me. And a lot of the things I like to think of as metaphors for things that we either don't understand on a scientific level, or that it's hard to understand on a cognitive level. So, and the chakra system is an interesting example because it is very much been influenced by Western psychology in the United States. So the traditional chakra system doesn't have to do with emotions or holding trauma in certain places or energy, blockages due to emotional trauma. But all of that has really been integrated into how we talk about chakras in the U.S. Because of the work of Carl Jung, right? Yeah, Carl Jung. Jung.
And it's fair to say there is no tangible id, ego, superego.
Right. So it's
but
just
they're
another
useful
way.
metaphors to understand and discuss. And so I'm on board with that. But is there room for an
Packaging
atheist?
it.
Is there room for a skeptic?
Oh,
in a
yeah,
yoga
for
class?
sure. You can, a good therapist, a good teacher is going to ask, they're going to get a vibe off of you, first of all, right? They're going to be like, oh, clearly, this is the kind of person who, if I mention the word chakra, they're going to be out the door. So hopefully you'll get, first of all, a good therapist who can read you. But then also you can totally explicitly say that doesn't really resonate with me. I don't really understand that. I'm not ready for that kind of crap. It also sounds like crap to me. We have experience with all types of people. And, in my opinion, if you're not willing to work with someone who has that opinion, you probably shouldn't be doing the work.
Sure.
Or, it's just like everything where there's a good therapist for you and it might not be that person. Right. So if that person is super into healing all of your problems with crystals and sound therapy and, working with your chakras and they're not into that, then tell them you're not into that. Ask if there's anything else they can do or ask if you can get a referral from them to see someone else.
Well, I have a couple questions, but before I get to those, I want to say we need callers. So if you have a topic, it does not have to be. Today's topic, of course, is about yoga, but it doesn't have to be about yoga. If you have watched previous episodes and have questions about, another topic, please, by all means, call in the number on your screen. 512-686-0279. So my questions, should I go skeptic first or funsies?
Whatever you like.
Okay, so skeptic first. Do you think it is doing any harm maintaining the maintaining the packaging of the woo,
The mysticism,
the mysticism,
and the magic,
keeping that in there? Because obviously there are some benefits to yoga, but it sounds like all of those benefits can be taken without packaging it in the woo. And do you think there is a place or a foreseeable future where we can take all of the benefits without having to, keep up the woo, keep endorsing the woo?
Is there a version of yoga therapy that looks like going to a physical therapist's office rather than a knockoff temple?
Yeah. Yes and no, because it's one of the things that makes it unique. And first of all, there are people who legitimately, I'm kind of on the fence because
Sure.
I'm not totally sold out for mysticism, but at the same time, I have had some pretty profound experiences that I'm I don't fully understand that. Surely that came out of my own brain, but I don't know how. And it's really useful for my own self-work and self-exploration to have pretty images and pretty ideas and have metaphorical ways of understanding myself. And yeah, there are plenty of people out there who, they look at it more realistically. They think of the human system in a different way than we think about it from a medical perspective.
Yeah.
And I think that is valid, and it's not necessarily...
And part of the success.
It's part of the success, and it's not just because it's a cool packaging that seems kind of ethnic and interesting. It's more just a different way of looking at yourself and addressing your issues. Because sometimes we have this perception from a scientific basis and a Western medical perspective where, first of all, we only treat problems. right? We wait for something to go wrong and then we try to fix it. And then we want like a pill or surgery. We want like a tangible thing we can do.
Sure.
And yoga has some of these more nuanced ways of approaching things that are like, understand yourself, explore yourself deeper, and treat your whole system. So it might be that you have a physical issue. It might be that you have an issue that's all in your head. It might be a combination thereof. We like to look at you as a whole system. So sometimes thinking about like the energetic body and the layers of the energetic body and the layers of the mind can be a useful way for us to address issues that other modalities don't address or can't address. So I think it's useful study. Definitely a lot of it comes from a time before Western medicine. So it's, kind of ancient and it seems like the humor system a lot where you're like, okay, well, this is bullshit. I'm not made out of yellow bile. And that's not making me like angry or whatever.
Right.
But at the same time, it can be a useful approach. And I'll be totally honest that, even with all of my training and my like 12 years of practicing and experiencing, there are huge swaths of the study that I personally have not experienced and don't understand. So I don't want to do like a blanket, this is all bullshit, because some of it is really useful.
I was just to say that I do feel like there is at least an opportunity, if not an epidemic, in fact, in the atheist community of completely neglecting the spiritual aspects of our humanity. And by spiritual, I'm not talking about magic or sky friends or anything along those lines. I'm talking about our general sense of who we are, those sort of basic existential aspects of our identity, our reality that we're going to die, the reality that we are distinct and separate from people and yet longing for connection to these people. These spiritual issues are a part of our identity as humans. And I do think it's important that we acknowledge them and address them. Where it gets creepy for me is the misattribution to magic. We don't necessarily have to understand it, but if we blame it on something...
If you take what you have no explanation for or don't understand, and you just say, because I don't understand this, it must be X.
It must be God. It must be the gods.
Right.
Then I think it's a lack of curiosity.
Oh, yeah.
And it's kind of doing a disservice, I think, to, exploration and curiosity.
Yeah, for sure. It was one of my, real frustrations with religion growing up is like, well, you just have to, and like there's not a real explanation, like you just believe it, like just do it. And that's not what the yoga practices are about. There's a lot of things, the philosophy we study is just like ancient peoples up to like modern teachers, just like analyzing how the mind works and then writing their own explanation for it and writing their own like visual metaphors. And it's all about going deeper and exploring yourself. There's, yogic ideas. Oh, I should say before I say the next thing that the term God is smattered along through all the yogic texts. And it's an idea of God that's very different from those of us growing up in the Western world, what we think of as God. Because there is the very, very ancient belief is that there is this like potential for consciousness that is just like out there. And it's not even like a being or consciousness itself. It's like the potential for. And that's what they mean by God.
Okay.
Yeah, very, very, very wooey. I know.
Yeah, it's tricky to walk into.
It's real tricky to walk into. But
especially when you've been running from some other things.
Yes. But you will see the term God. You will hear the term God. And just know that when we talk about that, you can insert in there any kind of higher power that you want. And higher power can mean like peace and joy. Like for me, the higher power is like unending, limitless joy. that is always there. So the more I quiet myself and the more I get rid of all the distractions in my mind, the more I experience a pure sense of unending joy.
Rather than saying a higher power, then can we maybe say a greater purpose?
Greater purpose is a great term. Yeah, I love that.
Because I think the term higher power is, especially for our viewership, is definitely
A little hierarchical.
Well,
Little bit.
it's a little religious-y.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And yeah, that's just the terminology I was raised in. So it doesn't, it bothers me sometimes, but then not as much other times. Yeah, so all that to say, I can't remember where we started. We've gone all over the place.
That is okay. I actually, I think that answers the question that I had. I do have another one that might be, I think, a little more appealing to our viewers.
All right, great.
This being secular sexuality.
I was going to say, we haven't even talked about yoga and sex yet.
Yeah,
No.
right?
And I was just about to say, so what you got for those people who want to incorporate into the bedroom?
Oh, girl. All right, first of all, I think you guys probably are familiar with the concept that having a better physical fitness and having better flexibility and strength allows you to have, some
Stamina.
more fun sex. Yeah, right. You can do more interesting positions for longer. So yoga helps physically with that. So, do some stretches, do some hip circles, do that kind of stuff. That's actually physically going to help you with, exploring fun stuff. But then on an emotional level and on a, mental level and even a spiritual level, of course, like understanding yourself is only going to help you relate better to other people. And that definitely affects your sexuality and your sex life. So, it's everything from like how you approach someone, how you feel like someone is approaching you, all the way to like being able to communicate non-verbally with someone, and even like increasing your intuition, your ability to empathize and relate to someone, even in really intimate moments. So there's a huge wide range of benefits, I think. And there's a whole study of yoga. I'm sure that y'all are familiar with this term, tantra or tantra. It's a full yogic practice. It's not just sex, but we really focus on sex here in the U.S. because that's fun. You've probably heard of the Kama Sutra,
Guilty.
which is specifically a text that is focusing on sex and sexuality. Tantra is an all-encompassing practice in that it's a very spiritual practice, and sex is integrated in as a spiritual practice to some extent. But the real kind of basis behind it is that there's not anything bad in the world. So sometimes religions and even other philosophies will say, like, you need to seek for these things and do these things because they're better and
This
best.
is the good. This is the bad. This
Right.
is,
One of the major tenets of tantric yoga is that everything is part of the human experience, including things that we typically think of as dirty, including sex. So they incorporated into the spiritual practice and into the yogic practice in the really ancient sense, it's like connecting to divine feminine energy, which is a fun idea, I think.
hoping to connect with some feminine energy later.
I am eternally skeptical, but yes.
Yeah. It was part of religious practice because it was thought that women had this inherent divine energy in them and that you could awaken it and come in contact with it through sex. So that's one basis behind some of these tantric practices. But now, tantric sex, you can really, it's a very sensual experience, a very full body experience. So you do a lot of things to prolong or avoid orgasm. So this is, so it can be a lot of connecting with your partner, but also a lot of sensory exploration, like smells and different touches and tastes and all this stuff, which can be just a really, really nice experience, especially if you are, when you're, all your sexual experiences are go, orgasm. It can be really nice to explore these kind of different aspects, and that's what a lot of the Kama Sutra discusses. It has a lot of positions in there. A lot of them are real crazy, y'all. You need to be doing a lot of yoga before you try some of that crap because it's insane.
Get flexible.
Dude. Don't just flip through and be like, yeah, let's do number 25 today. No, it's like progressive.
Because next thing you know, you hear a crack. And,
Yeah. And then you'll have to be coming to see me and tell me why your back is broken from the sex you were doing. It's totally fine. I'll help you out.
The doctor, what were you doing? How did you break your back? I was having sex.
I'd really be more concerned about breaking your penis, to be perfectly honest
Yes.
with you. Yeah.
It's a real thing.
It's a
Yes,
real,
it
real
is.
thing.
It's a real thing.
I'm squirming.
Yeah.
Although I mean, nobody wants to get injured, but
But a little bit, right?
back-breaking sex, I
Back-breaking
mean,
sex
you
does sound
know,
pretty appealing.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. So yeah, you can.
Dick-breaking sex, I am just out on.
You're out.
Right.
I'm
right.
not
Done.
interested. Don't sign me up.
Yeah, I'll limp around for a little while, but I don't want to like be out of the game completely.
Yes, submitting the FMLA paperwork, I feel, would be a little bit of a challenge. I have a very accepting work environment, but I
But
just,
still.
yeah, nobody
They'll
can
be like,
sign your
can't you
cast.
sit
Yeah.
the whole time?
Oh, dude.
That is so bad.
Yeah.
That is so bad.
But yeah,
Okay.
there's a whole wide range. There's stuff out there, and there are like tantric sex classes that you can take for sure. You can get a lot of great copies of the Kama Sutra. I'll include a link to one of my favorite translations that also has some of those like basic yoga moves that you can do to stay limber and stay comfortable, so you can have funner sex without injuries.
Always limber up first.
Yeah, always.
stretch.
Yeah, but yeah, there's a whole range up to just having better physical pleasure and better physical sexual experiences, all the way up to prolonging orgasm as a spiritual experience. There are even some women. I don't think men. There are some women who can like meditate themselves into orgasm using tantric practices.
Actually, it's 100% a real phenomena for both men
For
and
both?
women.
For both.
Yes,
Cool.
we've talked about erotic hypnosis and some other things along those lines
Great.
here on the show. But yeah, it's the same basic idea of not channeling an ancient mystical magic, but just using your brain and your ability to focus on things.
Yeah, and the way that the yoga texts would talk about it, and real wooey yoga teachers would talk about it, is about moving energy in your body. But on a physiological level, you're just doing things to stimulate all those organs and to stimulate your nervous system in a way that is similar to how you're stimulated during sex with someone else or with a dildo or whatever. So it's a lot about controlling really, really specific parts of your body. And that's what, deep yoga practices really are working towards. It's more and more subtle control. And control is sometimes a touchy word because sometimes it's about releasing control. Just like you
have to have it in order to be flexible with it.
Right. But, it's like when you're having sex and you're trying to have an orgasm. If you try really hard, that shit's not going to happen, right?
By the way, this is
This
your
is how you
orgasm
do it.
face?
No, that's
this
what I'm
is how
saying.
you
No,
orgasm.
that's the lack of orgasm.
Concentration.
Oh, this
the
is
lack of
the,
orgasm.
okay.
That's the
all right.
frustration and
The
concentration.
frustration,
Right.
face.
It can be really similar when you're trying to have a deep, profound meditative experience where the practice really is in releasing control, getting yourself out of the way, and then just kind of easing into it. And
letting your body do the work, letting it happen.
Right. So, practicing meditation and practicing some of these deeper emotional, spiritual practices can actually help you feel more comfortable in these other kind of esoteric experiences. It's I don't think completely outside the box to think of orgasm as a spiritual experience. Because you go to a weird place. People describe labor and childbirth the same way, where there's this weird part of yourself that you didn't know existed, and for a while you're almost not yourself. And so, meditating can help you feel more comfortable with that kind of weird experience.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say, yes, the mixture of brain chemicals and things are unique at those times. Now, y'all out there, we have open lines and absolutely no one has called in. So either we are going to horribly riff for a few minutes, or the show will end early. So we need to get some calls or some questions in the chat. Either way. Let's see here. Yes, that's where we are. Shall we riff?
Let's riff.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think I really wanted to just continue to ask about. Well, first of all, when you were talking about Tantra, and I mean, the thing I always think of is like just staring into the eyes and everything else. And then you mentioned a dildo, and I'm just picturing like really giving
With
that
googly
Hitachi.
eyes?
Yeah, oh, no, I wasn't thinking about. Now I'm thinking about that. Now I can't think about anything other than that.
You know, my vibrator has a name. Mm-hmm. And so it wouldn't be that, out of the realm of possibility to just put some eyes on it.
Put a face on there?
Get that real
Megan,
relationship
you of
going.
course know the question on everyone's mind right now. The entire internet is wondering,
What?
what is your vibrator's name?
Buzz Lightyear.
Oh, God.
You win. Okay, shut it down.
You are welcome.
Megan won the internet.
You are welcome.
All right, congratulations.
Yes. Boom. Mic drop. So, yes, he's a good friend of mine. Sorry, I'm making myself crack up. So we actually are, it looks like, have a caller getting ready right now in just a second. Let's see your question.
What is the vibrator's name?
Yep.
To infinity and beyond. Thanks for chiming in, Serafina.
Yes, Sarah. That is generally the idea. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
And
To get to that sort of
get to
like
beyond.
zened out beyond, disassociative orgasm place.
Right. Yeah, there's also, I can say, some of the meditative practices are also given as, replacement for drug addiction. Because sometimes we, people use alcohol and drugs to get to this state where you can feel like more open to exploring yourself and exploring your mind and discussing problems that you're uncomfortable with.
Sure.
So that's another great benefit of some of these practices is, being able to be comfortable with yourself. Again, it sounds really simple, but there's like 1,000 different ways and approaches that we take to get down that road. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I talk to people on the phone all the time who are basically just ready to write off therapy, or at least what we think of as traditional talk therapy. You, me, a couch, 2 chairs, we face each other for 50 minutes. And, they just haven't been served by that model. And so one of the first things I always tell people is, it might be worth it to try again, to come at it with a different attitude, maybe to find a therapist who's better fit. But there are 1,000 different ways to feel well, to find well-being and wellness in your life. So whether that's downloading a very empirical, sort of stripped of its mysticism meditative app like Headspace, or whether it is diving into something that's a little bit more goofy or mystical or fun, or whether it's, group therapy, yoga therapy, and like an active tantric practice. I mean, there are all of these different things.
Oh, yeah, that was the question that we got off of because I went on a tangent. You were totally able to do yoga without any spiritual aspect at all. Like, just moving and breathing is so good for your body and your mind. It's incredible. Like, that's the thing we've done the most studies on. They've studied brain waves, they've studied all kinds of stuff, physiological and mental benefits, and they are profound. And I would say that most people are coming into the yoga studio for those benefits, and that's totally fine. If that's all you ever do, I love that. I would love for you to come into class and just stretch and breathe and chill the fuck out for like an hour. That's all I want from people. And then when people come in and they're like, hey, I want to know more, I'm like, great, I have 1,000 books for you.
Right.
And, I'll tell you anything you want to know. So always come in knowing that you can get a benefit and it doesn't have to be chakra-based or Ayurvedic-based. Ayurveda is like alternative Indian medicine. There's tons of benefits to be had without buying into literally anything.
cool. So on the sex angle, because, asking for a friend.
Yeah.
What would be the best beginner exercise for kind of getting the engine going?
Yeah, I would start with good old cat and cow. These are flowing back and forth between poo postures. It is going to
Poo postures?
two postures.
Got it.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
I heard
You
poo,
heard it too.
I did.
All right.
I'm so sorry.
I'm picturing
I'm
a
like-
cow,
No.
and I'm just
Cat and cow. This is
Okay.
a really typical warm-up posture in a lot of classes because it has so many great benefits and it's so simple to do. So it'll help lubricate is a word.
Yes.
Lubricate the spine.
That's what we're looking
Lubrication is
for.
important.
It helps to lubricate your joints, so your joints have fluid in them.
I was hoping you were going to say
I know.
something else.
It'll lubricate those parts too. I'm getting there.
Ooh, okay.
So it'll help your spine be more supple. It helps move the hips around. It helps move the core muscles around, but it also gets into the pelvic floor, which, anatomically, men and women are different, but really the muscles down there are pretty similar. And how they activate and how they release is really similar. In biological males, there's just a set of muscles that goes around the prostate, and around females, it goes around the vagina. And so knowing about those muscles and activating and releasing them can be real helpful. So cat and cow, you just go on your hands and knees, and when you inhale, you do like a big sway back cow. So you let your belly drop and you reach your chest forward and you kind of look up. And then as you exhale, you round your back like a cat, like a Halloween cat. And you like tuck your chin and tuck your tailbone. And if you look up, just Google cat and cow. You'll find it.
Probably cat and cow yoga.
Cat and cow yoga.
'Cause
I would not look up cat and cow
cat
sex.
and cow poo postures.
Right.
Or just cat and cow, because I can only imagine the adorable images that would come
That's
up.
true. That's true. Cat pose and cow pose.
Might
So,
not
yeah.
get the sex engine revving, but it is something nice about it.
Yeah, it'll
yeah.
get the warm and fuzzies.
Yeah.
Yeah, So you just do that a few times. Inhale, arch your back, exhale, round your back. And then you can add in like hip circles or kind of going side to side or just literally whatever feels good. You just breathe slow and move. And that position will help, again, lubricate the hips, lubricate the pelvic floor. It just gets all those muscles kind of warmed up. And those are all like your big sex parts. So that'll help. But then anything else that you have problems with. So if you have low back pain or you have upper back pain or you have neck pain and those things get in the way of you having a nice sexual experience, then look up some like good stretches for that part of your body, and that should help. And the big thing that makes yoga different from physical therapy or just like plain stretching or exercise is the incorporation of the breath. So just slow, deep breathing while you do the movements is going to be really helpful. It's also really true when you're like actually having a sexual experience. If you want to slow things down and you want to prolong or avoid orgasm, slow your breathing down. I don't know if you've noticed this when things get hot and heavy and you're excited. You breathe quickly, your abdominal muscles pump. So if you want to avoid that, then you relax your abdominal muscles, you breathe more slowly, and that will help your body down-regulate and kind of avoid that amping up. Yeah.
Ancient secrets on how to last longer.
It's like all that the Kama Sutra is about. It's great.
I'm just imagining, I mean, I don't know if I have enough physical it would be too much cardio to go that long.
You know,
How long is that long? I mean, what are we talking about
Well,
here?
that's the thing is that a lot of the tantric poses and a lot of tantric practices, they are very subtle. So you get into a pose and you might activate and relax the pelvic floor. And that's all you're doing. So from like an outsider perspective, if somebody was like watching the porn of your sex experience, they'd be like, nothing is happening. Because you'd just be sitting there. And it's like subtle
you just
work.
take your finger and you like run it across the bar to get
Right,
and then
you're like, fast forward,
30
fast forward,
seconds
fast
and
forward,
then nope, still wearing pants. What do we?
Still wearing.
Right.
I'm the only one who does that apparently. I'm sorry, I get impatient with my pornography.
No,
heard it
you're
here.
not. No, you're not the only one who does that. I didn't know that there were I was not the only one who
You're
did
not
that.
the only one. You are not the only one.
No.
We all get impatient with our pornography sometimes. The
Like,
point you were making has
this
escaped me.
acting-
Yeah.
I'm just
Oh,
riding this
yeah.
train.
It's all about, you can slow and prolong and a lot of the tantric stuff. It's not necessarily like sometimes it'll take more stamina on the part of one partner than the other. And it's almost always if you're doing like a, normal, like gender normal heterosexual experience, like the Kama Sutra is going to be male, female only. There's no other explanation of any other types of sexual encounters. You might get some more modern interpretations that might try to interpret that, but I haven't seen any.
Utilize some relevancy. Yeah.
Right. So if y'all have any suggestions, I would actually love to hear about them. But yeah, so a lot of them are going to be like, man stands here and holds woman up for however long it takes. So it's really going to be like you hanging out and him doing all the work.
Okay.
Yeah, because again, he's
Your
trying.
kink is not my kink, but your kink is okay?
Right? Yeah. Because again, he's trying to access that divine energy that you already got inside yourself. And he's got to go get it.
Okay.
That's the ancient basic.
He's got to get something, but I don't know exactly.
Right? He's going to get something. And there also is a lot, there is oral sex descriptions in there for sure. So that at the very least could be great for not heterosexual couples, because there is some orals, and I feel like there might be some handiwork too.
Hey, all is welcome. We actually have a couple callers now.
Great.
Thank you guys. Keep them coming. The first one we've got here is Randy from New York. Randy, you are on the air.
Oh, hi.
Hello.
Hi again. Megan and Christy have called before, and hi, Lauren.
Hi.
So this is kind of a segue to what you just mentioned. It's about, the yoga and oral sex. And because you're talking about like these type of movements and exercise assist, and I'm wondering if there is the same type of application to your mouth and your jaw, because performing cunnilingus can be something it can be taxing to your mouth, to those parts, and so I just and I'm just gonna just to frame it before where I'm coming from. I play a musical
Asking for a
instrument.
friend, right?
I'm sorry?
Asking for a friend.
Yeah. So I play for a musical instrument. I play the recorder and I play the Baroque flute. So we actually concentrate on exercises for your tongue and your jaws and your muscles for the performance. And I'm thinking this should be applied to sex, and I'm being serious about it.
Yeah,
so
there
what
are
your
some.
thoughts about it? What does Lauren think about it? Or is there a mechanism or the type of exercises that apply to this?
Yeah, there definitely are yogic practices for, a lot of facial muscles and jaw muscles. TMJ disorder is something I work with a lot, and that's something that can really affect your enjoyment of giving oral sex if you have a lot of jaw pain. So there are any stretches for that.
Can also lead to jaw clench, which can directly affect
Bad
your
for
enjoyment
everybody.
of receiving oral sex.
Yes.
Lockjaw.
Yeah.
Yes. So anything that is going to, if you're going to look up stretches for TMJ disorder, that will help you with any kind of discomfort that you feel around it. But yeah, stretching your tongue out and moving your tongue around and pressing your tongue to the top of your mouth while you open your jaw and move your jaw around, all those things that as a musician to do can be really helpful. And there are a lot of yogic practices. There's one specific technique called lion's breath that I'm going to back up away from the mic to show you because it can be real loud, where you literally just you exhale really forcefully and stick your tongue out, and that can really help to release some jaw tension, anything else you got going on. Also, you look like a freaking idiot.
Are you doing 5 reps of that, or
Yeah.
what is that? What does that look like?
Yeah, you might do 5 reps.
Okay.
And also, things like neck tension can really lead to, discomfort in your mouth and your jaw. So you might do some neck stretches, things like that. But yeah, one of the benefit of lion's breath, it feels very cleansing. It's very relaxing. It's almost like a sigh. But also, you look like an idiot. So it helps you to kind of not take yourself so seriously, which can also be really helpful. Anything that's going to help you relax and just enjoy an experience is going to be really helpful for your sex life.
I mean, we spend an hour and a half talking about sex here every week, and I think that despite that, the message we really want to say is that, don't take it too seriously. Don't treat every sexual experience like it has to be perfect.
The end all, be all.
Yeah, I mean, just have fun. I mean, you're just talking meat slapping against a different piece of talking meat. I mean, really, there's
we need
nothing
to get
magical or divine about it.
Do we need to get the peach and the eggplant to do like a diagram here? So yes, to answer your question, apparently yes, there are some exercises that you can do that will help at least prevent lockjaw.
Practice your lion's
during
breath.
oral sex.
Yeah, and I was wondering also because one, and this, and it might sound like I'm joking, but I really am being very serious. Like playing music instruments, especially the recorder. There's your tongue has to become very agile just by virtue. Like that's basically how you articulate the music. And I was wondering if that could apply, like to be better at. I mean, not even to prevent injuries, but actually to be better and because you have to control the speed. And in my experience, some women or all women like different things. I mean, that's that. I mean, there's not the like. Someone tells
There's no
me
magic
I know what
recipe
women want,
of like
they don't know what they're talking about. And some
clockwise,
women
clockwise, and turn counterclockwise, counterclockwise.
Exactly. But some women like soft. Some women like it hard. Or someone like fast. Women like slow. And I think like great. The mouth, but tongue control is actually. I mean, you can be very versatile about that. Is there anything in yoga or tantric sex that I guess trains for that, for lack of another word?
Sort of. So, I mean, like, there are practices that probably would, like, inadvertently help, like chanting, like doing Sanskrit chanting, like just getting your mouth around weird sounds can help you develop some, like, agility in there, I guess. But, yeah, I think your training as a musician is really useful. That's all I could really think of is chanting as far as actual yogic practices go. And then just, practice.
Yeah.
No question.
Practice some more.
And practice some more.
Yeah. Well, and pay attention to the lady
Yes.
who's on the receiving end. She'll probably
This will be a big
like the best educator of what you're doing right and wrong.
Yes. And it will be a big portion of any kind of tantric sex class. They will talk about genitalia and different places that it can be stimulated and different ways to stimulate it. So again, you're not just like going straight for the one spot and then doing everything you can on that one spot. It's incorporating your hands and incorporating your breath and incorporating your voice and in doing all these things rather than just being like, let me just poke this for a while and see if that works.
Varsity level sex isn't about finding the sex button and just tapping it.
Because maybe there's more. Maybe there's like several buttons.
There's a lot of buttons.
There are a lot of buttons. And yeah, again, like opening up that intuition and learning how to communicate non-verbally and, all that stuff is going to be really helpful.
Nice.
Well, this is awesome.
Yeah, glad to hear it.
Well,
thanks so much for calling in.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. Take care.
You too. Bye. So we have, I think, one more caller, and it looks like this will be our last caller of the evening.
Okay, well, fair enough.
This is Flip from Detroit. Hello, Flip.
Take
you
us
are
on
on
home.
the air.
Hi, guys. How you doing?
Howdy.
Good. How are you?
Good. First time caller. First time I'm watching you guys live.
Yeah, thanks for checking us
On the
out.
backlog. I'm a fan of all the shows.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Hey, I think the last caller, he needed to leave a business card or something.
Yeah, right?
I think
He should
was
teach
showing
that
off.
class.
Yeah, he was showing off more than he was asking for contributions to sex life. I
We should
think.
all be so lucky.
Right?
I'd like to see proof.
Hey, so I got a question. I thought long and hard about it because I heard you guys say that if you didn't get some calls, you were going to cut the show early, and I didn't want to see that happen. So secular sexuality, what I want to know from you guys is secular sexuality like a thing, or is that just a title you use for some secular people sitting around talking about sex?
May I?
Yeah, dive in.
So secular sexuality is sex and sexuality minus all the religious bullshit. It's the way that sex and sexuality should be, in my opinion, and in the opinion of the ACA, I think.
Yeah, as well of course, as Dr. Daryl Ray,
Yes.
who coined the name and whose show we're happy to be now carrying the torch for.
And who is in the chat right now, actually. Hey, Daryl.
So, is there actually like, do you guys have is there a secular sexuality like mission statement?
Well, we have a few catchphrases. Basically, if it's
Same basic idea.
yeah, if it's I like to say if it's safe and it's consensual, have fun. I know, as Christy likes to say, what we talk about is so the official terminology is we lay the intersection of sex and religion and occasionally ourselves bare, openly and honestly, discussing a wide range of topics each week. I, of course, like to imagine that as a frank place to come together, unadulterated by religion or magical beliefs while we talk about while we talk about our hearts, our parts, and everything in between.
Aw.
Beautiful.
That's good.
so.
Beautiful.
Yes, generally speaking, secular sexuality is basically everything that sex and sexuality should be without religion and without the influence of religion, all those negative aspects.
And I think it's worth noting that Megan keeps using the terms sex and sexuality as separate. And I think that that's important because we're not just talking about sex, which I want to mention, of course, is just intercourse. Sex is any form of sexual expression, whether we're ranging from a hand job to something much more sophisticated that involves, I guess, holding somebody up and being in a headstand and all these things.
Maybe a hammock?
Yeah. Yes, it's sex, but it's also sexuality, which is the way that we express these feelings that we have. It's our emotions, it's our hearts, it's everything having to do with our gender and our orientation, the way our bodies are built and how we feel about that. I mean, everything gets tied into these different things, and that's what we're here to talk about. So whether it's abuses by the Catholic Church, whether it's acceptance of folks in the trans community, whether it's what type of breathing postures will increase your cunnilingus, we're wanting to look at all of these things while recognizing that so many of the folks who come to the ACA, who come to this channel, who come here, are coming from a place of just being bombarded by religious shame and frustration with our politics and all of these things that are not empirically based, that aren't well reasoned, and that aren't rational or worth building our lives around.
So let me ask you this then.
Mm-hmm.
I experienced in my life a situation where I feel very strongly about it, and I hear it talked about on your show pretty often, pretty freely. In the community that I'm a part of, it seems to be, my side of it seems to be frowned upon.
Sure.
And I'm talking about monogamy in relationships.
Okay.
I see, I tend to catch okay, so I'm a gay guy.
Mm-hmm.
Me and my partner have been together almost 2 years. And we are a very openly monogamous couple.
Mm-hmm.
And in the gay community, you're often almost frowned upon.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that, yeah.
Yeah, if you're not open to, sexual advances from other couples or other people and being open in your relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And I almost feel like we've been shunned by a lot of, we're big guys, we're part of the bear community, and we've been shunned by a lot of the bear community because we don't take part in open relationships.
Yeah.
I wonder, do you guys think that we're being a monogamous gay couple? outside the norm, especially being secular? Does that make a difference?
Are you saying, is it uncommon or is it problematic in some way?
You know, I guess I would like to hear what some secular people feel about monogamy.
Okay. Yeah. I personally feel the same way about monogamy as I do about polyamory and all the other options. If that is what you want and if that is what works for you, then don't let anyone else tell you that you should be anything else. That doesn't work for everyone, but there are some people that it works for, and if it works for you, then good for you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to sit here and tout my cred, but even though we do talk a lot about poly issues on this show, because there's frankly not a lot of folks who are, and it has come up a little bit more recently. I mean, I very proudly stood in that woman there's wedding as she and her husband, who's my best good friend, pledged to be only together forever. And, you know, the nature of that decision is up between them, but I very much did then and continue to support that promise that they made to one another, and I think it's a very beautiful thing. So I don't think by any means that this show is meaning to come across as anti-monogamy.
Right.
Yeah,
and I didn't want it to sound like that's how I felt, but I do hear, not just from the show, but from, like I said, from my community, where it's almost not the norm.
Yeah.
And like I said, we've been outcasted to some extent because of that. And I wonder, I wonder, like when you say that you stood by your friends making that commitment, can that commitment still be the same without a ceremony in a church, you know, in front of your friends, in the name of a god?
Oh, for
Yeah,
sure.
clearly.
Of course. Yeah, it was a totally secular ceremony.
Okay.
First of all, I'm sorry that you've experienced that from your community. That just sounds not fun. But yeah, I want to agree with what they've said, that, you know, anything that you choose to do with your partner and you're both in agreement on, and that's what you want from your relationship, that should be accepted by your community. And if it's not, then the issue is with them and not with you. So it would be different if you had entered into a polyamorous relationship and then decided that you wanted to be monogamous, and, you know, that might cause some tension. But, if you and your partner have made this commitment to each other, then your friends and community, I think, should be accepting of that. And I think it's a real shame that you've had those experiences.
Yeah, so often we struggle to form...
I'm sorry, I was just going to say, I think that maybe there's not enough secular people talking about being monogamous. I hear a lot of secular people talking about being poly or being open, but I don't hear a lot of secular people saying, no, you know, like, it's kind of just us, and that's how we like it. Not being out and open about that.
Yeah, I mean, the vast majority of people are monogamous. And so I do think that we perhaps shine less of a spotlight on those folks because they are so ubiquitous in our culture. But I also hear what you're saying. It was oftentimes we form communities only to then turn around and use them as exclusionary devices. And folks in the gay community have been excluded from so much that they have a very strong, significant, and oftentimes cloistered community. And that can breed a little bit of exclusion.
And I was just going to say, I think the certain things like the right to, the right to exist, really, the right to socially be accepted and acceptable, being, open or poly. These things have been so hard fought for that I think to an extent maybe they're getting defensive because, you are not conforming to this mold that was fought, and people bled and died for.
I mean, this conversation came up a lot around gay marriage, and we should just do away with marriage rather than increasing it to gays. That was a common thing said in that community.
Yeah. And so I think I think it could possibly be partly more of a defense mechanism than necessarily a judgment on you and your partner.
Says a lot about them and where they've come from.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, I think we all at this table agree that if you are happy monogamous with your partner, then more power to you.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for calling in. And I'd like to just thank everybody for joining us tonight and very casually point out that we are 4 subscribers away from hitting 1,000.
Please like and
so
subscribe.
We're a new show, and we would love for you to help us get over that first hump. So
yes, please.
Please do.
I will do a Snoopy dance next week if we can get over 1,000.
You heard it here. If you want that to happen.
So once again, just before we wrap up, I want to shout out to the ACA newsletter. We have our Patreon. We have our Facebook. We have our email, which is sex@atheist-community.org. We have our speaker series. This weekend is R&R Raw. And then on November 24th, right after Thanksgiving, will be Hemant Meta. Let's see here. Next week is How to Survive the Holidays, which should be fun. And I think we probably all have some interesting stories to share for that one.
Yeah, we'd love to hear yours if you'd like to email us. But we'll be joined by Serafina Smith as we are trying to talk about how to get through the Thanksgiving time without burning the house or the turkey.
Yes. Especially not the turkey. I mean, the house can go
The house
to hell,
is fine.
but the turkey needs to be, spot on. And the last thing is just, again, like and subscribe, please, if you like what you're seeing or hearing. And with that, would you like to take us out?
Yeah, whether it is with your monogamous husband, whether it's with Becky with the tight ponytail, whether it's with your mouth or your Buzz Lightyear, as always, we want to encourage you, once you're done watching the show, to take a moment and give yourself a big ol' orgasm.
Or a few moments.
A tantric, hours-long orgasm, or better yet, give somebody else one.